So, welcome back to our second live episode, recorded here in the 6th floor of Auto Trader Towers. It's not really a tower, but it does sound pretty good. So, alongside me, I've got 3 willing and able tech leads. We cast the net far and wide and came with 3 willing volunteers. I think Paul might have been arm wrestled in. Yeah. So, going to give a big hello. So first up is Paul Nunnerley, AT Tech Lead. Paul. And then on the other side of the couch, we're going with the piece first. We've got Phil Jenkins, Thoughtworks Tech Lead, working alongside Paul on our CX program. Hey, Phil. And I'm going to get the name right because I've been practicing this. It's Caius Eugene. Got it right?
Spawn.
Brilliant. Took me about 500 goes at that. So Caius is another thought worker who also is a tech lead, who also works in the CX space. So no surprises there. Kisses on. This talk is all going to be about tech leading, and you're going to tell me what a tech lead is. So actually, to kick off, on your definitions, your individual definitions of what you think a good tech lead is in the year 2024. And I'll start with you, Paul, because you're giving me like the death stare. So over to you, Paul. Tech leading, what's it all about?
As active listening.
Active listening, okay.
We do a bit of a training course at Auto Trader for people who are like looking to be tech leads or who are tech leads. And that course includes a significant amount of expectation setting with people on what the job is. And we draw like a big circle and we put loads of stuff in it that are all of the roles and responsibilities that you now have to care about if you're a tech lead that before maybe just happened without you thinking about it. And I think it's really important that people see it as a different job almost than simply being a good software developer or a good participant in a software team. You have to begin thinking about how a collective of people are building software. You can't just think about what that software is. There's a whole team aspect to it that kind of unveils itself to you as you like move into that path. So I'm not going to define it. I won't be put on the spot like that. Beat it.
So before I'm going to come back to the surprise. So yourselves in Thoughtworks, is tech lead like a very well defined art, or a little like Paul said, it's a little bit of lots of things that maybe you're a little bit surprised about?
Yeah,
right.
Very well defined. No, I'd say. I think Paul's description kind of lines up with how we do it as well at Thoughtworks. I sort of see this like Venn diagram where tech is one aspect of that, or some architectural knowledge, where you've got the people side, you've got the business side, and then you've got like a risk and delivery side as well. You need to be aware of these things, and you're sort of right in the middle of that Venn diagram, and you're like the glue that holds that thing together. Yeah, and I think the best way to describe it is as a career change. Like if you've gone through the technical ladder, you started out as a grad, you've sort of built up knowledge of different frameworks, different ways of working with the team. You've got this big step change at that point. And this is how we try and get people to understand it. Is I think
very, very difficult to do it without that kind of experience of hands-on. That was probably impossible to do it without that. That really takes you a long way, but when you switch into that role, that's when the learning begins, and now it's all a whole new school of things that you have to consider.
And I think there's 2 perspectives to it. There's a kind of outward-facing external perspective where you're doing a lot of stakeholder management, stakeholder communication, communicating technical concepts to non-technical and technical stakeholders. You're aligning with like business objectives and strategies and things like that. And then you've got the inward-facing where you're working with the team, you're mentoring, you're coaching, those types of things. So I think there's 2 dimensions. This is the kind of typical consultant answer of it depends sort of thing. But there's those dimensions. So very much building on what Pete and Paul were saying.
Yeah, and Paul, you both worked in-house and as a consultant. So I don't know yourselves, your journeys, but have you found that tech leading in-house is very different than tech leading from a consultancy perspective?
Yeah, it is quite different. You get the privilege of being able to see things change over a longer period of time. And that means you can sort of think about putting things in place that you're going to benefit from like 6, 12 months down the line. I know the Thoughtworks crew and people who are consultants are thinking about that stuff, but you don't have the same motivation necessarily to care so much about it if you yourself are not going to reap the benefits from it with, like
directly as an individual.
Yeah, I think on the flip side is you don't get to see the fruits of your labour, which is quite frustrating sometimes. You do all this effort to kind of help change, do some transformation or put processes in place, and then you don't get to see the outcome. You don't get to see it come to fruition sometimes, which can be a little bit, frustrating and.
I'm going to say, I think to your point, Paul, you've got the option of not necessarily worrying about what's going to happen once you've gone, but then I'd say you're probably not doing your job right at that point. You've got the option of doing it as a consultant, but you shouldn't, because that's not what you should be there to do. You need to have that longer term thing in the back of your mind at all times, because
it's really tricky though as a consultant.
It is hard
because when you come into a job as a tech lead, into a new place or a new team, there's a load of investment you need to make in building the network that's going to support you in doing the job that you want to do at the company you're at. And that's largely lateral. It's not like looking at your bosses and making sure they like you and looking at people who are on teams that you're overseeing or whatever. It's everybody in the business is potentially somebody who you can, help out. They might help you. You may be able to ask them questions. You may be able to tell them. If you come in as a consultant, the network that you have in that business is much smaller. And like the degree to which you can start to think about how you work, how you interoperate with other teams is way more limited because of that. I think there's a greater challenge doing the job.
I'd say, as a consultant tech lead, compared to a consultant developer, where I think maybe you need to make fewer connections, you've got a more well-defined thing to do. Again, as a tech lead, you need to form those relationships, and it's the starting from scratch each time. I suppose that's where the challenge comes, and doing a good job of that.
Yeah. So what we are, this is where I get interested is, so where, what was your roots into tech lead? And if it's always as a consultant working on projects with other organisations, how did you become a tech lead within a consultancy? Because obviously you must be people that are helping you through your journey. So first question is maybe did you always want to be a tech lead and you knew you wanted to be a tech lead, or did you, we were talking in the previous talk, fall into that particular role? I'm going to start with you, Phil. You're nodding at me.
Thank you. I fell into it. I didn't. How do I best describe this? Okay. So I was in a team. I was a individual contributor, senior dev, doing a fine job of that. I was kind of third in line, I suppose, to the tech lead role. Then over the course of a couple of weeks, there was a series of unfortunate events, so we say.
Are those ones you can reveal, or is it
not right now?
Okay.
Catch me later. Yeah, interesting. Let's say there's a series of unfortunate events. Yeah, that'll do. And it was kind of, people just looked around and said, "Phil, you'll do." And immediately thrown into that situation or that role change. So there's a lot to sort of process with that, clearly. I did get something out of it because I came back and kept doing it, but it was never a deliberate, I really want to be a tech lead. It was a lot of what does the tech lead actually do, to be completely honest. And now I know. But for me it was in at the deep end and then just go from there. And that was 5 years ago or so.
Yeah. What about yourself?
My journey started, I was working in a digital agency in Manchester, quite a small one, and we were, in effect, the MD at the time, he had a bit of a personal family experience. His daughter at the time was diagnosed with cancer. She was 13. I should say now she's cancer-free and she's in her 20s. She's doing really, really well. But from that horrendous experience his family went through, we kind of spun off to create our own product, which is all about a kind of health information app for young children and young patients going through cancer treatment. And from that point, we needed to found a team for that. We needed to start building that platform. So I kind of became the tech lead and built up a team, and we drew that for 3 years. We built that platform out and released it, and that was kind of my journey into tech leadership. So it's very much from the ground, building up a team, hiring, and then delivering a platform, a health information platform at the end of it.
So you were tech lead before joining Thoughtworks?
I was, yeah. I was at what Thoughtworks calls a lateral hire, which we get kind of funny looks at first, because normally Thoughtworkers kind of quite often go through a graduate scheme where they go up and they have true Thoughtworkers, and then a lateral hire has to be indoctrinated into the Thoughtworks way of thinking. So
the programming exercise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pair program.
And Phil, you were you became a tech lead whilst at Thoughtworks?
I was at Thoughtworks at the time, but I was a lateral hire before that, but I'd been through the sort of hazing process.
Never heard of these things, lateral hires. What about yourself, Nunners?
It kind of mirrors what happened last week in the podcast world, where we were talking about the Manchester scene and the prevalence of
week.
I don't know, when do these go out?
Literally, I was like, last week, like, I don't know what you're talking about, I was on holiday.
Much better than last week's audience, this. There was when I graduated, there was a huge plethora of digital agencies offering like software engineering jobs. What they actually offered was the ability to come into like a software contract that had been poorly negotiated with loads of scope committed to and a tiny team. You had to just come in and figure it out. And I learned in that job that I didn't like following the instructions of people who I didn't have a lot of faith in. And that was hard because it's probably a bit of a personality defect as much as anything on my part. But that job was really hard. I was dealing with a lot of other people's poor decisions, and it kind of made me really, really want to not deal with bad decisions that I didn't make. I'm okay dealing with my own terrible decisions and do it on a daily basis. But when it's someone else, I find it much harder. Yeah. So that was kind of the motivator. And I remember I was like living with my mother at the time, my mum at the time. And I'd come home from work and I'd be like, I just don't understand it. These people who have got 10 years more experience than me are really upset that I'm trying to manage them as a freshly graduated 19, 21-year-old, whatever I was at the time. And I just came home and I just kind of had enough of being in that environment and became a bit bolshy. But I left that environment, moved to Thoughtworks, and as with the other two, through some circumstance, somebody who was running a project, they were on a long-term assignment from Chicago, stood up one day and said, "Oh, my wife and I have a baby, we're going to go back to Chicago. Paul should run the team. See you later, I'm out." And that was that.
Right.
I didn't really volunteer for it, I just sort of just ended up doing it.
Yeah.
So that was my second job, and probably with 2 years experience at the time. I wasn't really ready. So I had to learn how to do it.
So for all three, so what was the biggest surprise? So when you became a tech lead, we talked about like being an individual contributor and some stuff at the beginning, but what was your biggest surprise, or even still is the biggest surprise today? I'm going to stay with you, Paolo.
Right. People problems are often very difficult, and finding out what motivates different people is quite a long, and it's like a personal thing. Everybody is different. You have to figure out what it takes to motivate one person and not another one. And some people are completely independently made, and they'll just come in and rock on. And some people, you have to kind of show them where the gold is or what they're going to get out of it. I still think that's like something that does not come naturally to me, that I've had to the humans. Some people don't come naturally to me. Yeah. But the other stuff is, like how to manage a large software project and keep everybody updated. I'm doing this wrong every day of my career, but I'm always learning. And it is always a bit like you work with good people and suddenly they unlock a whole load of other techniques that you didn't know existed for how to manage things. Yeah. It's not a very good answer. It's a bit random.
That's all right. Yeah. Any surprises for you, Caius, in terms of like where you're going, this is not what I signed up for, or this is way better than I thought it was going to be?
I think sort of building on what Paul was saying really about that communication piece. I think you've got to be quite a good storyteller, and I think you've got to find ways to communicate with people. It's surprising how you think everyone's going to understand the same things that you understand, and that's obviously very much not the case. So you have to. I think analogies are really good. I love a good analogy that communicates a concept to people that they otherwise understand, even on your own team.
And analogies, like they have this like social buoyancy where every now and again suddenly everybody's using the same analogies. Now everybody's saying it's like being in the race car instead of watching the race. Now everyone's saying that. You hear that every day for 6 months, and then it'll go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
people extend they extend the analogy as well, and like it becomes more complicated.
Yeah. But it's true. You get that kind of like meme status sometimes as well, don't they? They get a bit like as life goes on. But, yeah.
Phil, if you want to add.
can I have two surprises?
Oh, as many as you want, really.
So the first one was, I guess I had quite a stark transition into the role. The first one was days became a lot less objective. So you get to the end of the day as a developer and you know pretty well if you had a good day or not. Like you fixed a bug, you reproduced something that was only happening in prod. Very sort of objective. Like today was a good day. When I moved to the tech lead role, that was a much harder question to answer. Like, was today good? Like maybe I've just spent all day in different meetings with people, had some conversations. The payoff doesn't happen until later on. So that's having to sort of
gratification.
To sort of measure on a daily basis was just too frequent, and you just end up going a bit mad trying to think like, am I actually doing the right thing or not? That's surprise one. Surprise two was the relationship with the team changed like overnight, because I think their requirements of me changed overnight. So rather than being an authoritative developer, like telling people, this is what I think, let's do this, it was they needed more from me in terms of what are we doing next? Why are we doing this? And, just that change in relationship, like I had to start having more difficult conversations with people because no one else was going to do it. So I think that was a bit of a surprise as well. It took me a few times to get sort of used to that.
Yeah, it's being that decision maker, isn't it? It's like people look to you to make a decision because people don't like making decisions. So you become like
that was a turning point for me. Was going from I make decisions to trying to kind of coach people to be good decision makers and like support their decision making. That was like something where for 3 or 4 years I thought it was my job to make decisions for people, and then I think over time I've come to the conclusion that actually it's my job to help put people in a position when they can make the good decisions, and they feel supported. That if they go out on a limb and they do some research and try and come up with something, that I'm going to help them. I would be like a backstop for bad decisions and like help them. But then they kind of get the sponsorship to like flex those muscles and take it forward and grow their career in a direction where they're expected to make decisions, whereas previously they might have been uncomfortable to it. Like anything, as you do more of it, you get more comfortable with it, and that has a benefit to everybody in those teams. Yeah.
So how does it work then? Like when obviously Phil and Paul, you're working together, and Caius, you'll probably have it with other companies working with. So is there like a tech lead off where like you're like, I'm more tech leader than you, or it's my decision, not your decision, especially like if people are looking for you for guidance? How does it work when tech leads are working with tech leads?
When you introduce two cats,
Well, I was
they
thinking,
come on different sides of the door, and you open the door and one of them get closed and all.
I don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Just pace around the room.
Yeah, is it like that? Like, so how, because I mean, you all have like different schools of thought, like different experiences. So how does the tech lead interaction? So we've taken the team out now, but actually especially where we've got the CX program, we've got tech leads from Thoughtworks working with tech leads from AutoTrader. How does that dynamic work? Like, because that's another element of it.
I think there's so many interpretations about how to do the role, because I think, going back to a previous point about tech roles, the job titles are terrible and they're like super wide open to interpretation. I always think there's room for different ways of doing things. I certainly see it as, I'm not going to say there's one right way of tech leading a team.
I've been to that previous point. You could make decisions for people all day long and have a pretty good career doing that, and a lot of people make good software. So it's not that that's wrong.
You could be the sort of bottleneck through which all decisions go. So I think as long as people are sort of adults about it, it's fine. There's enough room to be able to operate independently while still working together on things.
Yeah, does it not confuse the team in a way? Like, I've got multiple tech leads, like, where is the direction coming from? Or is it more that you get a bit of like, agree to disagree and we're committing this is the direction we're taking? Like, how does that work, especially got multiples? Or is it just
very rare that you'd have two tech leads over exactly the same set of initiatives? That would, because it's hard to be two in a box and feel like you have autonomy, and that can be quite unsatisfying for two tech leads to be in that position. But tech leads do have to work together, and often will be working on the same things. And like, just like a load of people who are not leaders of teams have to get in a room and collaborate sometimes, tech leads have to. People have different styles, and it is annoying sometimes to have to, hear one person approach a problem from one direction, you think, you're bloody mad. That's not how you should do that. You need to come at it.
So is this you and Phil on like a daily basis?
I mean, we're actually working through it right now.
That's what I was sat with.
You can say.
This is a bit of a therapy session for these two.
Yeah.
We had a therapy session. You spotted it.
We did.
Yeah.
How did I go?
Really well.
Yeah, it was really good. And felt hair.
Yeah. I feel like Sid's been sat in the middle here.
We'll both leave now.
I think for me, so my current role, I'm a tech principal role, so I tend to work within kind of program teams or strategic teams, and I'm often working with tech leaders of other engineering teams across multiple teams. So I'm usually kind of trying to bring us all together, trying to problem solve together, trying to break up arguments that are going on about approaches. And no, it's never really that, but it's about that kind of creating that collaborative kind of bigger vision point of view as well. So
yeah.
But the degree to which you can successfully collaborate with people is accepting that, like, the diversity conversation includes diversity of approach, diversity of background, diversity of education. That means that everybody's going to be coming at things from different backgrounds. That adds value. That's not,
definitely.
Right. We shouldn't be just doing things one way, and it's my way because I'm
the tallest.
Well, in my case.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. Because I was going to ask about the whole diversity piece, because I've been like, we were talking beforehand, obviously 3 white middle-aged males. Sorry if you're middle-aged, but like what are we doing around in the tech leadership around like more, whether it's diversity of thought, we talked about social mobility, women in technology, like where does the role of a tech lead play in making sure you got the right talent coming through?
You're looking at me, Pete. So,
sorry.
That's okay. I think in this space, from where I'm sitting, actions speak louder than words. So it's what we can do rather than what I'm going to say now. I don't think that's as important. I think the best advice I've got was to just shut up and listen and learn and see what people need on your team, and amplify their voice if required. But some people don't need that. It's just they need to, you to smooth the path and do what you can with it. But I don't think my opinion on it is less important. I think it's more about what I do rather than what I say.
Yeah. How do you see in that talent come through? Like, if we're doing this again, it's a bit hark back to previous questions, but, in 5 years' time, we could get a panel and it's 3 female tech leads. Do you see that we're doing that talent mapping or encouraging people to come through?
So we could have put a panel together of 3 female tech leads, but it's, I don't think all people who represent them.
I think it's like we jokes about it,
right? Like be involved in those, like forced to take part in things. So that
no, but we did joke a little bit, going, joke's the right word. He's going. Actually, when we looked around, it was the number of males, white males, that we could approach to come on the podcast was significantly more. We could have identified 3, but in terms of the numbers that we were going and approaching, it was very white male dominant. So it is going back to that, like, so if we're actively doing it and actively listening, what other things can we be doing about that? So I know we've got, in AT, we've got like DTA and other like women in engineering, sort of like initiatives are really doubled down on. So I don't know whether there's some of the things at Thoughtworks that we're doing that would make that, in terms of the numbers that we could approach for this, would be much increased.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that you're partnering with organisations that are doing things people like Code First Girls, for example, that are mentorship and training for women that want careers in tech. And I think partnering with them, I heard a good quote today, if you're looking in the same pool, you're going to find the same fish. So, I think expand the number of pools that we're looking in. Universities are great, but going into other places, I mean, we heard some brilliant ideas today from the previous episode of the podcast about the things that you can potentially do around increasing that diversity within technology careers. I saw an interesting stat actually today. It was around it's only 17% of women and underrepresented gender minorities in technology careers, which was a little bit like eye-opening. At the same time, obviously, from what you just expressed, is probably not that surprising as well. So,
well, there's a few sides to it, isn't there? Because there's generally the tech industry, people who are interested in it, people who come through the pipelines that we're already, the pools we're already looking in. What does that look like? How can that be made better? I think other people are pretty better placed to speak about that. Yeah. But then there's a transition through a job and your career and how you get promoted through time. And yes, people do need like coaching and mentorship, but often underrepresented groups are also under-sponsored. So they, where opportunities come up, maybe they don't get. And the DTA is a really good example of trying to correct that. So trying to find people who could have and should have perhaps had those sponsorship opportunities and giving it to them, so they, we kind of overcome that bias that might exist in our environments. But as a tech lead, you have a responsibility for that as well. You should be sponsoring people who are promising within your teams. It's not, and by sponsorship, I mean, if you hear a conversation about an interesting project and you think of someone who might be able to contribute to that, just, you're in conversations that other people aren't in, just saying that person's name, they'd be a good candidate for that, could be sponsored. It's not always, a massive thing, but maybe mindfully just addressing some of the unconscious biases that are in there around who gets sponsored and who succeeds in what type of room that has a certain type of makeup can help, because a room full of people from the same background is going to behave in a certain way because those external cultures are going to come into that room with them. And being able to mindfully acknowledge that stuff is happening and try and make the space a bit more neutral and a bit more navigable for people who don't come from that background it is your responsibility as a senior person.
So before I hand over to a question for the audience, just one other question I've got. So obviously we talked about, we've got a CX piece of work, or is it CC, CX?
3C.
3Cs, X, C cubed. Is it different, again, has there been a surprise, because you all work in this space of, you've gone into that particular debate space and it's different skills again, or is it just, it's not, I'm not going to say rinse and repeat, but is it that it's just another domain, or is there nuances of actually working alongside your users who are actually sat in the same building, which brings a different angle to it?
I'm a really big advocate of fostering user empathy within engineering teams, and that's not just in a CX space, that's in all space. You've always got an end user at the end of the work that you're doing, but I think when you're in the CX space, you're much, much closer to your end user. So, and every decision you're making is potentially going to have an impact on their experience, things they're able to do. So I think just having that, being close to user research, even pairing developers with user researchers and really understanding, who are the people we're building this for and why are we building it it's a really important factor. So.
What about yourselves on our current CCCX thing? Anything surprises that you've seen?
It's way different. I mean, you get to hear every complaint that the person has with the thing built. And previously, I'd arrogantly assumed that I'd done a great job. But now, whatever I do is going to have some critique, and I am going to hear about it, is going to make its way to me. Great. I mean, it's good feedback. We all of us in engineering culture talk about feedback and how important it is, knowing if you're doing the right thing.
That's first-hand user research as well.
They're in the building and they're like, we could see it. I get feedback from it.
Yeah.
I still haven't made my mind of what kind of problem space this is. There's there's the mental model of problems. Like, is it a simple problem? Is it a complicated problem? Is it complex? Is it chaotic? I don't know where it sits in that model. It feels like it's complicated and complex somehow. Because it's Auto Trader is an organization that has evolved through loads of forces, and how it operates has changed over time in such a way that the way that people interact with each other isn't always designed, and sometimes it feels like difficult to get your head around it without just stopping to observe it. I think in this instance, assuming you know how it works is probably the wrong thing to do. I think we probably have to step back and watch how it works and try and be a bit kind of, I wouldn't say anthropologist, because that sounds a little bit highfalutin, but I think we just need to really see what is happening rather than assume we know what's happening with our kind of arrogant tech brains.
Cool. Anything for you, Phil, before I hand over to our lovely audience who I'm sure have got millions of questions?
So the only thing in addition to that is, we talk about the users, but the people that the tech is serving kind of sit on both sides of it as well. So it's the people buying the product or using the service, as well as the people within the organisation that provide support for that. And both of those need to be borne in mind, I suppose, while you're doing it. And I guess the other thing is just the breadth of the space. It's a whole ecosystem of tooling and vendors in this CX space, all offering slight variations of things, but nothing's quite, it gets another Venn diagram again of things that are overlapping, and it's just being able to navigate that in a sensible way to not try and keep a handle on that complexity that Paul talks about, because it's definitely a big beast.
Cool.
Without oversimplifying it and just going, it would be so much easier if it was simple, so I'm going to wish it so.
Close my eyes. Okay, right. I'm going to give the mic to Ian. So if anyone's got a question, you can stick your hand up and Ian will come find you. No pressure.
Anyone? Sorry.
So it's a question for any of you, but I think Paul touched on it. Have you got any advice for kind of like being a tech leader at such a young age and having to kind of not necessarily like feeling it, but having that like pressure if you don't know whether there's people there with 20 years more experience than you that are kind of looking down on you, but you're looking after them and you're like a bit of imposter syndrome kind of thing?
I think that comes back to the point that Paul made at the beginning around it's a different type of career. So, you've got people that are quite happy just being developers. They don't want a leadership role. And, they might have years and years more tenure than yourself, but they're happy in that role. And as Paul said, it's about enabling them to do the best job they can do. Sure, there's experience there, but learning from them as well, recognizing that you don't have all the answers. You might then lead a leadership position, but you're going to have to learn from the people you're leading and working with as well.
Yeah, I think don't be shy in this one. I mean, it's such crap advice, because if you are shy, you're going to be shy. You can't not. But if you think there are people in the organisation who have experience that you would benefit from, like nobody is ever offended when someone comes and asks them for help because you think that they're good at something that you're not good at. They'll feel flattered. They might give you terrible advice and you can choose to ignore it, but like going and speaking to somebody about that is always going to help. I honestly am a book learner and read books about things, so I have chosen to read things about the history of software management and how it's evolved over time. I'm really fun at parties as well. Yeah, there are some good books. Like there's a book called Peopleware, which is from the 90s, and that is a bit dated, but it really tells a good story about that world. Camille Fournier wrote a good book. I think it's called The Manager's Path. That's really good for kind of helping you. Like, if you don't have the experience, you need to try and fall on people who have that experience. And some people have tried to make a career out of synthesizing your experience, so it makes sense to look there. There's another good book called Resilient Management, which is one I took quite a lot from over the years. So you can do a bit of research yourself, and also you will get it wrong, and that's okay. You really better being honest about people. Like, if I got that wrong, I wonder what we could do next time. Like, you're a group, you're a team, you're all working towards this goal of doing software better. It's not the end of the world if some software isn't perfect. Like, we can always fix it. Don't let pressure make it feel like it does. Everything is mission critical, and I'm on edge. Like, you can stop, take a breath. It's okay. Like, yeah. I feel like a therapist.
I feel better.
That's what I told you this morning, wasn't it?
I'm impressed you got a library in your head as well. There's a lot of books you reeled off there.
I didn't know we were going to have this conversation. Somebody recommended me one the other day. I like to know how other people approach things. I've had mentors in my career who've been really helpful as well. So my friend Darren has been a real mentor to me through the years, but Ben's been a great mentor at those companies, and both of them are completely different and offer different things. And like, I've come up with my own way of doing the job as well. Like, there's no one way of doing it. You kind of it's like a sweet shop. You need to pick what you like, but also try new things.
Yeah, I'd second the mentoring thing. Finding someone you're comfortable to complain to and ask for support, who you trust. That's a really big thing. And yeah, it's open to interpretation, right? It's a really wide role. And no one's 100% figured it out. Like, you learn something different. It's kind of a basic thing to say, but you do learn something new every day, and nobody's perfect at it. So
technology is not the be all and end all either. Like, there's loads of people out there solving hard problems, doing interesting things. You can look at mental models, how people approach it, all that kind of thing. Where the answer doesn't always come from like trying to program really hard or trying to architect it really hard. Like, go for a walk. Think about how designers have built things. Like, the world's deep and vast, right? There's lots of interesting information out there that'll apply. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, business owners, stakeholders, exec, knobbers with big opinions and loud voices like me. What makes a good one and a bad one in your experience when you're working on a project or an initiative? Bearing in mind, I'm sat right here.
I have a personal defect. I monopolise group situations, so I'm going to defer to someone else, and then I'll answer after.
I think an example of probably a difficult stakeholder would be someone who's unwilling to listen to your concepts and your ideas. But then I think it's just a matter of working on that relationship and understanding why they're not willing to take that on, how you can kind of break through that communication barrier. Find a good analogy, maybe, is the solution to that. So that would be my example.
Have you ever heard the one about being in the car and the senior
AI.
It's called that.
I would say a stakeholder that doesn't tell you until it's too late that things aren't working out. So someone who's really upfront and says, look, and gives you that sort of direct feedback, like something needs to change, this isn't working, and can explain their sort of motivations, and it's not just personal. So I've been in situations where it almost comes as a nasty surprise at the end, like surprise, it's wrong. Much rather have that fail fast with that kind of relationship. I think is the best thing for me.
Yeah. I like to know the forces that are motivating what people want. So it's all well and good telling me you want this, but I don't know that exactly that is possible or can be delivered. So I like to try to find stakeholders who are willing to explain, well, behind the curtain, Paul, this is what the pressure I'm under, and this is what I'm trying to achieve. And, we've got this strategy to do that, because everything is a bit negotiable, and how you solve it. Ultimately, I want to solve a problem. I don't really care if it's with technology or with a people process or with, I don't know, just everybody stopping for a little bit and trying to calm down. I just want to solve the problem, and I need to understand the motivators behind that problem. So good stakeholders are really transparent and don't guard that from me. I think stakeholders who don't tell you until you've really, really ballsed it up that you've ballsed it up, and they could have seen it come in, and they've probably been thinking, they're going to balls this up. Wait for it, they're going to balls it up, you ready? And then you come in and tell them, and they go, balls it up.
Yeah.
That one is, I could tolerate it, but it's not a healthy, productive way to work. I think some people who are stakeholders push some of their anxiety onto you around what they're worried about and how that affects them. And that can be okay if in the conversation you're able to understand the motivator behind that. I'm worried about this, so I'm telling you, rather than I'm in charge and you should do this, because the next day that worry might not actually have manifested into something long term, and you can get into the habit of like turning your head every 5 minutes to try and anticipate somebody's worries. I think a good stakeholder is able to step back a little bit and think, I need to make sure I'm giving a fairly clear steer. It can change, but I don't want it to be changing monthly, daily. Not that way, no, not that way.
Yeah, it's a transparency thing, I suppose, as well, isn't it? It's hard just to use reasoning to figure out what those motivators might be. You're probably going to be wide of the mark, so you're not aware of the bigger picture or some external forces that, it's really valuable to know those kind of drivers.
Yeah, there could be real commercial things that you just don't know about, and you can think, this feels like a terrible idea, but behind the scenes there's a really good motivation for it. I was telling one of you about when I was working at PayPal in the payments company. A company wanted us to build a digital wallet for them that, by all accounts, was going to have, I would say, 5 transactions a week or something. Nobody in the market, no consumer wanted it. Nobody cared a little bit about it. But my employer at the time had negotiated a preferential rate with the card networks, and if we delivered this feature, every single payment through the platform was going to be half a cent cheaper or something, and that adds up when you are a global scale company, to the point where it doesn't really matter if the product crap. the force that was motivating that change was in that business's interest. And like then revealing that to us made us all feel what we were doing was worthwhile. Whereas if we'd have just ploughed on with the product, not knowing the context behind it, we could have felt a bit empty and a bit like unsatisfied.
It's professional drivers, but it's also understanding their personal drivers. You know, that person might be going for a promotion. That piece of work is like their one chance to get that promotion. And, you know, just understanding that can just give you a little bit of perspective on, you know, how they behave and how they communicate with you and what drives them as well.
I read a thing recently about the difference between gain and gap. So like gain is where you came from and where you are now and like the stuff that's happened since then. And gap is where you want to be and how much is between you and it. And at the leadership level, you are often really, really focused on gain. Like, where do we want to go? How do we get there? Sorry, gap. I only read it, yeah. I'm not fully since. Yeah, it's fine. Swap them round in idea. Yeah. Often really focus on where you're going, how far away it is. And some things are really far away. And actually, there's a real importance in like, this is perhaps less for stakeholders, more about teams, but understanding how much you've done so far and making sure that like everybody is feeling that progress and it's bringing everybody along, because self-esteem can be collective, and that's really important that we all feel what we do has some worthwhile merit. Otherwise, just a job, and that's no real way to live your life. Like, it has to be some motivator for it.
Still with the chat. Is that right? Yeah, fine. You may have already answered it, but and we touched on it, but to explicitly call out something I've seen with a lot of junior developers that come along is there's a common misconception that to be the tech lead, you've got to be the strongest technical person on the team, which is hopefully we're in a room of people that agree with that statement, but disagree with that statement even. But I just wondered, what are to explicitly call out, I guess, for anyone more junior in their career, what are the common misconceptions do you think are there for somebody in, you know, they're an individual contributor, they're just in the first couple of years of their career? What are the common misconceptions do you think stop people kind of planning to evolve into the tech lead space?
Misconceptions about what that path is, yeah, and what the job,
or what the job specifically is as well. I think that the one misconception is that is the only path to be a senior technical role. You know, there's various paths. Like you can be a lead engineer. We're talking about kind of tech job titles being a load of rubbish, but you know there is lead engineering roles where you are expected to have a depth of knowledge in a certain area, and that's where people come to you as that fountain of knowledge, and you're driving that vision. And from that point of view, you're not just. So there are various paths. So it's not just that you've got to become a tech lead. Tech lead, like we said before, is quite a different career. You know, you're getting involved in people and management and those types of things. But if you want to just get really, really good at a stack, for example, then yeah, lead engineering roles are there and other paths. So
yeah, I think I'd agree with that. There's a sort of general fear that once you hit tech lead, you're then on this path to become post-technical, that sort of dreaded term where you're sort of gradually backing away from the keyboard as you go. But there are options available, and you can kind of pick and choose as well. That may be part of the benefit of being a consultant, is you can think, well, this is going to be more of a technical gig, this is going to be more of a people problem kind of gig. But there's options available. But I think that's the main thing. Is I'm not sure I want to be a lead because I can stop. You know, I'll stop doing interesting technical stuff. I'll just be in meetings all day, and that's not necessarily the case.
I was drifted off. I was just thinking about tech stuff. What are we talking about?
my questions do often invoke that for a big off about this stuff. I'm saying you're a junior, and what are your common misconceptions?
Yeah, you can't do the job without some authority, and the authority actually comes from your experiences and like hands-on technical experience. So you really do need to care about being a good software engineer to be a good tech lead. You do have to care. But then you also have to want to do the other things. And those other things are, do you care about how well your software project is managed and how coordinated the delivery is and how well the stakeholders have been managed? And I won't carry on going and. But, you know, there's a whole load of other things that if you're building features for a product, you don't necessarily have to worry about. If you are the tech lead, you do. And you should want to do them. Like, you might be the type of person that finds that really satisfying. If you don't, you know, give it a go, but don't, you know, if you don't like it, don't necessarily persevere with it, because there is a individual contributor path. You can continue to become a software developer that like really delivers value. If you want to go down the tech lead route and you are an individual contributor, focus on understanding what the software projects you were working on need to be delivered and why. You know, rather than looking at the stories and just thinking, I will make this piece of code work, think about what it brings to the business to deliver that feature, who's going to benefit from it, why. Ask the product people who you work with why certain decisions have been made. Like, be really curious. Try and follow decision making out to the edges and find out who made those decisions. Try and just understand how that works, because being in a bubble is great. Like, it's quite safe in the bubble, and like you have your perspective, and it can be a really like confident place to be. But all of the people you work with have real strengths in different ways than you might have, and you kind of have to go and figure out what they're doing and figure out how you want to be a leader in that space. And it will be different in a different organisation. It is a real benefit if you have come up in the organisation and got like hands-on experience, and then become a tech lead there. You have a real chance of like being really successful in that environment. If you get like airdropped in from a completely different part of the world into a new company and they go like, right, be a leader, that can be a different set of challenges. So as a developer, you don't need to think, you know, you've not been a tech lead before, you don't need to think about that second option. Got all the benefit of your actual hands-on experience. You can figure out how to apply it in an influential way. Perhaps the next stage for a tech lead is think, well, how would I do that again, but without all of my friends and all of my experience in like a new environment?
It's a challenge. I suppose people have misconceptions that put them off it. I see another pattern where people want to sort of rush through the developer part of their career so they can become a tech lead as quickly as possible.
And then when they become a tech lead, they're like, I'm not programming enough. I wish I was doing more programming.
Yeah. So I think it doesn't apply to everyone, but I think there's a case to not rush that. Like the experience you gain as an individual contributor working in different teams, seeing different styles of leadership can be really beneficial for you as a leader yourself. So I think that's another thing I see is people just want to like hop over that bit and just jump straight into the...
You know, that's like career appetite.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know if there's any sort of gravitas associated with the lead title, but I don't know. It's something I've come across. My advice would be don't rush that. Like, make the most of that bubble period you were talking about. Yeah.
Cheers, Ian. People are going to see me walk then, first time. So, I think we've come to the end. So, again, big thanks to these three for their willingness to come on and talk about tech leading. So, big round of applause. You can clap yourself if you want, Paul.
I'm so enthusiastic
about everything.
If people start clapping, I just start clapping.
Oh, and thanks again for, as well as the audience, listeners tuning in. So please like and subscribe on YouTube. I'm not going to do another plug here. Hit the notification button so you never miss an episode, and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And that is definitely that for tonight. So thanks a lot and see you soon.